Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we'll dive together into a heartfelt story filled with emotions. From the quiet, longing phone call of a son missing his mother, to the tender hospital moments where love, worry, and hope intertwine. It's a journey of connection, family, and the bonds that carry us through the toughest times. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. It's me, Huyen. Today, I want to share a story that has left me deeply worried, something unexpected that I never could have imagined. Our bamboo house, the small haven filled with our family's dreams, is nearly complete. But to reach this day, he has had to sacrifice so much. He threw himself into work with all his strength, with his whole heart, and it was that very sacrifice that caused his body to collapse. I'm truly overwhelmed. I thought everything was gradually falling into place, but suddenly a storm hit. I don't know where to begin, how to face it. So today, I want to share everything that happened so you can understand this journey with me. That morning, he woke up very early. Perhaps the distant ringing of Mitos's bell stirred him awake. Our old house was crumbling, riddled with termites. The dry wood dust floated in the air, making me sneeze, my throat hoarse from coughing. Every breath reminded us how fragile this shelter was, how it wouldn't hold up much longer. I endured it for days, not daring to complain for fear of adding to his worries. But he saw through it, his eyes heavy with sadness and guilt. He took my hand and said softly, "I'm sorry. I've always wanted to bring you and our daughter back to Boroguer, to our homeland, but I still haven't given you a proper home. I just want everything to be perfect for you and Maya." His words made my heart ache. I hugged him tightly, trying to comfort him. "Don't worry. As long as I have you by my side, I'm already happy. The rest will come in time." I said this, but in his eyes, there was still a smoldering sense of disappointment. He feared the bamboo house wasn't finished yet, feared time wasn't on our side. Without hesitation, he stood up abruptly. Before even eating breakfast, he dove into work. That determination made me both admire and fear for him. By noon, the sun blazed fiercely, scorching our skin, the heat rising from the ground making the air stifling. Yet he climbed onto the roof, hammer in hand, each strike firm and precise. Planks, bamboo poles, every small detail was meticulously adjusted. Not a single complaint, not a word of grievance. Only perseverance, so steadfast it brought a lump to my throat. Looking up from below, I saw sweat soaking his forehead, his muscles taut, every movement radiating silent sacrifice. The sunlight burned down on his weary skin, but he remained resolute, as if each hammer strike was a promise to this family. My heart trembled. I was both in awe and heartbroken for him. I wanted to run to him, to hold him and say, "Stop, it'll be okay." But I knew deep down he wasn't just fighting for a house. He was fighting for our family, for Maya, for the dreams the three of us had never abandoned. That day, under the harsh sunlight, I realized that true love isn't sweet words, but silent sacrifice, an unyielding spirit that never backs down. He worked tirelessly until noon, as if time no longer existed. I prepared lunch with all my love, hoping he'd sit down, rest, and recharge. I called out from the kitchen, hoping he'd hear. He began climbing down from the roof, but his steps were heavy, sluggish. Then suddenly he staggered. In an instant, He lost his balance and fell backward. My heart stopped. I rushed to him, catching him, helping him into the house. His forehead was burning, his hands trembling. A real fever. Panic surged within me. He had overworked himself. Days under the scorching sun, eating poorly, barely resting, all to finish this house for me and Maya. And now, his body could no longer bear it. I was filled with regret. If only I had stopped him earlier, begged him to rest. But I stayed silent, and now I had to see him exhausted like this. I supported him, letting him lean against my chest. Seeing his face flushed with fever, I nearly broke down. Fear, helplessness, but also overwhelming love. That moment taught me that love isn't just support. It's knowing when to stop, to protect the one you love from their own sacrifices. Maya saw everything. Her wide eyes filled with worry. She stepped closer, grasping her father's hand, resting her head on his arm. That small gesture was like a whisper. "Daddy, I'm here." The air in the house grew still. The scent of freshly cooked rice lingered, but no one had the heart to think of food. All we could do was wait. Wait for the fever to pass. Wait for his breathing to steady. That moment taught me a profound lesson. Love isn't just effort. It's care. It's protection. I looked at Maya and silently vowed I would never let him pay for our shared dream with his health again. I helped him into the house, took a clean cloth, soaked it in cool water, and placed it on his forehead. With every passing second, I felt his body grow hotter, weaker. I trembled as I went to the kitchen, cooking thin porridge, hoping he could eat before taking medicine. Every movement was gentle, afraid of adding to his exhaustion. Seeing him lying there, my heart grew heavy. The money invested in materials, the effort, the dreams, all suddenly felt as fragile as a thread. But in that moment, all I wanted was for him to recover. I prayed with all my faith, "Please let him get through this. Let us stay together, continuing to build this life." In his fever, he still whispered my name. His voice was weak, but filled with care. He wanted me by his side, never leaving. I held his hand tightly, our fingers intertwined, and said softly, "I'm here. I'll always be by your side. Please, be strong." Watching him breathe heavily, feeling his trembling hand in mine, I was both terrified and filled with love. Time seemed to stand still. Each heartbeat reminded me that happiness sometimes lies in these small moments. A hand held, a whispered word, a presence. In that humble room, I silently vowed I would do everything to care for him, to ensure nothing could tear this family apart. I asked little Maya to stay and watch over her father while I went to the kitchen to prepare some soft rice and a bowl of thin soup, something he could easily swallow. Every gesture, every movement was slow and careful. But even as my hands were busy, tears silently streamed down my face. I felt an overwhelming sense of regret. Why did I let him push himself to this point? Why didn't I insist he rest? The gentle bubbling of the broth in the pot reminded me how fragile life is. A single moment of carelessness, one effort too far, and everything could slip away. From that, I realized, love isn't just about sacrifice. It's about care, about knowing when to stop. When I brought the bowl of porridge, I saw Maya still sitting close to her father, her small hand tightly clutching his. Her eyes shimmered with tears, yet she remained strong, as if trying to pass her strength to him. I set the bowl down and leaned in to whisper, Sweetheart, Daddy will be okay. Let's take care of him together, all right? I helped him sit up slightly, propping him with a soft pillow. Carefully feeding him spoonfuls of porridge, I watched his dry lips move faintly. He swallowed slowly, each spoonful a challenge. But I was patient, never giving up. Little by little, he ate, and I felt a spark of hope flicker. When he took the last sip of water, he turned his head slightly toward me, his eyes red from fever, his voice weak but clear. Thank you. I gripped his hand tightly, trembling as I replied, just get better. Nothing else matters. That entire afternoon, I barely left his side. I changed the cool cloth, covered him with a blanket, fanned him gently to help him breathe easier. Maya sat nearby, sharing little stories to keep her father from feeling alone. Sometimes, I caught her looking at him, her eyes filled with fear, but also deep love. I knew Maya understood that her father was her rock, her greatest support. Outside, the sun dipped behind the bamboo groves. The golden-orange light streamed into the small room, wrapping everything in a warm blanket. I felt a slight relief as I noticed his breathing grow steadier, his face less strained. The fever hadn't broken, but at least he was fighting. Night fell. I spread a mat beside his bed, not daring to close my eyes. The slightest movement, the faintest heavy breath from him, and I sat up immediately. All night, I watched his every breath, praying ceaselessly. Maya lay beside her father, her small hands still clutching his, like a thread tying the three of us together. In that moment, I understood more clearly than ever that family is everything. The bamboo house might be unfinished, might not be perfect, but as long as we had each other, as long as he was healthy, everything else could start anew. The next morning, when the first rays of sunlight filtered through the door, I saw him open his eyes slightly. His face was still weary, but his gaze was softer, no longer clouded by fever. I grabbed his hand, overjoyed, as if granted a miracle. He tried to smile, his voice hoarse. I'll be fine. Don't worry anymore. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time from relief. I could only nod, squeezing his hand tightly. Maya let out a soft cheer, hugging her father, her face beaming with happiness. That day, I learned a lesson I'll never forget. Love isn't about chasing perfection or sacrificing until you forget yourself. Love is knowing when to pause, listening to the body, and above all, facing challenges together, not letting anyone bear the burden alone. As I sat by his side, I made a silent promise. From now on, we would build our home not just with bamboo and sweat, but with care, health, and true happiness. Because if we lost each other, even the most beautiful house would be nothing but a cold, empty space. By the afternoon, when he could sit up, I helped him to the porch to breathe some fresh air. He looked around, his gaze lingering on the unfinished bamboo frame. I knew he was still troubled, but I placed my hand on his shoulder and said gently, "We can finish it slowly. The most important thing is you, your health." He stayed quiet, then nodded slightly. Maya ran into the yard, picked a wildflower, and carefully placed it in her father's hand. "Don't scare me again, Daddy. I just want us all to be here together." He chuckled, his voice still weak, but in that laugh was both happiness and warmth. That evening, the three of us sat together, sharing a simple meal. I felt happiness, felt that every sacrifice was worth it. Though the bamboo house wasn't complete, our love was whole. And you know what? In that moment, I realized a family isn't built from perfect bricks, but from care, patience, and love that never gives up. If you're following this story, I hope you'll find a bit of faith and hope for yourself. Because love, no matter the circumstances, has the power to heal, to uplift, and to keep us together.
Khi hoàng hôn buông
Thank you for
xuống,
being here,
Đệ và
for
Adam
listening to our
vượt
story.
qua khu
If this
rừng
video
sương
touched
mờ
your heart, please
dưới
subscribe
cơn
to the
phùn mưa
channel
nhẹ,
and turn on
đuổi theo
notifications
một
so you
bóng
don't
dáng
miss
bí
the
ẩn
next
trông
stories.
giống Huyền.
And if you'd like to support us
Dù
further,
họ tuyệt
you can
vọng,
become a
đuổi
member
theo qua
or
cơn
contribute
mưa
a little through
bùng đầy.
YouTube. Every small
Cô ấy
gesture
biến mất
is
vào
a
trong
huge
bóng
source of
tối,
motivation for
để
us to
lại
continue
trong
this
Đệ
journey.
một nỗi
Once
đau
again,
nhón
thank
xen
you all so
lẫn
much for
hy
your
vọng
support.
và nghi ngờ.
With your encouragement, we
Sau
have the
đó
strength
họ
to
tìm
build
thấy
not just a
cô,
house,
một
but a
cô gái
lifetime of
trẻ
happiness.
ốm yếu
In
và
the
bất
stillness
tỉnh
of
bên
an ordinary morning,
rìa rừng.
Day sat quietly,
Nhưng cô ấy
his
không
voice
phải
trembling
Huyền.
as he called his mother.
Mọi người
A
đưa
simple
cô ấy
act
đến
that
nơi an
carried the weight
toàn,
of longing and
trong
unspoken
khi
emotions.
tâm trí Đệ
The
vẫn
silence
ám
on the
ảnh
other end of the
bởi
line
hình
revealed
ảnh
more than
thoáng
words
qua
ever
vào
could.
người phụ nữ
Meanwhile,
mà
at the
anh
hospital,
nghĩ là
Maya
Huyền.
lay weak and fragile, her pale
Sáng hôm
face reflecting
sau,
both vulnerability
Tử
and
Vi
strength.
tỉnh dậy trong một
arrived
căn
with
phòng
warm
xa
porridge in
lạ
hand,
và cảm
his
thấy
eyes
bất
filled with
an,
quiet determination,
nhưng bị cuốn
trying to
hút
hide his own
bởi
exhaustion.
sự điềm
Their
tĩnh
moments
của
together
Đệ.
were tender, yet heavy,
Trong khi Adam xuất
woven with
hiện,
love,
một
worry,
buồng không
and an
khí
unshakable
căng
bond.
thẳng lặng lẽ bao
But
trùm,
beneath the surface
gợi lên
lingered questions no
những
one
mối
dared
liên
to
hệ
ask.
tiềm ẩn
Would Maya find the strength to recover?
và quá khứ
Could
chung.
to bear the silent burdens pressing on
Cùng
his heart?
nhau, họ đứng trước
The
ngưỡng
story
của một
leaves us
câu
waiting,
chuyện đầy những câu
wondering
hỏi
what
chưa
destiny
lời
has
giải đáp.
prepared for them both.